So this video probably is going to get taken down by YouTube. I'll be honest. I think there's a high likelihood, um, having looked at this and having already shot this video, and I'm reshooting it just to. I don't know why I'm reshooting it. I think I'm reshooting it just because there's a few points that I want to get in there, and I mean, I think there's a high likelihood that this is going to be removed. So let me just throw that out there. But we're going to be talking about black market food systems, right? And nothing that we're talking about doesn't have a news article already attached. So nothing that I'm saying is something brand new. For those of us that are in the sustainability movement, you're going to know that nothing that I'm talking about is news to you, right? We've talked about this. This has been talked about in person, in forums, at the shows, at the conferences. Nothing that I'm saying is news to anybody that's been in this community, in this movement, right? I've been in the sustainability movement for 20 years now. There's nothing new about this, right? So nothing that I'm going to be talking about is going to be news to those of us that have been in this community. But for those of you that are watching that are not in the sustainability movement, you don't grow your own food, you're not familiar with agriculture, this might come as a shock to you. But this is just what we see happening whenever food supplies get restricted. And by restricted, I don't mean just there's not an abundance of it, right? There could be an abundance of take what's going on with the Trump administration, right? 300,000 metric tons of, ground beef, beef that's about to be brought into this country. There's no shortage of that, right? When you're bringing in that much, but just because there's a lot of it around doesn't mean that you can afford it, right? So when we're talking about scarcity doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a lot of it, right? There could be tons of houses for sale, but if you can't afford it, it's not available to you. And so when we're talking about scarcity, we're just talking about your ability to access that service, access that food, access whatever it is that we're talking about. So I think that's important for us to know. And for those of you that, again, that are not familiar with the sustainability movement, especially when we're talking about food sovereignty, I think that these 5 things that I'm gonna list, I think they're gonna come, they might come as a shock to you. But again, this is when food gets scarce for the everyday person, whether it's due to availability because it's just not physically available, or price availability, these are things that we start to see happening. So my hope is we can talk about it so that we can hopefully get people to prevent having to dip into these, black markets in order to feed their family, right? Because at the end of the day, I think it's important to note that we are responsible for feeding our family. So if we take the steps necessary now to make that happen, then we don't have to worry about engaging in, in actions and behaviors that the government sees as criminal, right? Because everything we're mentioning are crimes. And so, I think it's important to talk about what we know is going to happen, right? Because if we can prevent it from happening, I think that's a win for everybody. So without further ado, let's get started with number 1. So the first thing, illegal gardening, right? And illegal gardening is going to come into, kind of two different sectors here. We're talking about gardening, right? So gardening is something that will be a very big black market industry. And a lot of people are like, what do you mean gardening? And here's the thing, I don't mean gardening in any nefarious way. I'm talking about legit putting seed in the ground, watering it and growing food. Like gardening is, and it is currently, even right now, it is a black market industry. And so a lot of people don't realize this, but just to, and again, I'm going to give you citations for all this, for those of you that are going to be shocked by what I'm about to say. And again, if you didn't know this, again, don't take my word for it, fact check it for yourself. But when I talk to people, a lot of people, they just, when we start talking about these concepts, they're really just shocked. And so in the United States of America, there's only 3 states that by state statute allow you to garden, allow you the right to garden. So if we look at a famous case, Ricketts versus Miami Shores, 2017 out of Florida, the Ricketts family was cited by city ordinance under Miami Shores, Florida, and they were faced with jail time. Anyway, so Ricketts, they did the judicial review process pursuant to accordance with Mayberry versus Madison 1803. And they appealed and went up all the way to the state Supreme Court of Florida, where the state Supreme Court of Florida said that no, you do not have an absolute right to garden on private property. It wasn't until the governor in Florida 2019 enacted a state law that says you have an absolute right to garden. The state of Illinois has also taken a similar measure for a right to garden. And then if we look at Maine has a constitutional, in their state constitution, provision for the right to grow food. So again, we have 3 states here. We have Florida, we have Illinois, and we have Maine. These are the only 3 states that by state statute or by state constitution, you have a right to grow food. Now, does that mean that people in Oklahoma or Texas or Oregon or California have gardens? Yes, there's gardens in every state of this country, but there's no absolute right to garden in those states, meaning that a local ordinance could very easily come and say, hey, gardens are just not aesthetic. And since they're not aesthetic, we can make aesthetic measures that would prohibit your garden. And we've seen it in Texas. We've seen it all over. There's lots of case law on it. I plan to do a video on that. The reason why I haven't done a video on it yet is because there's so much case law to go through. Like, you think this is, a lot of people say, well, that's just 1 or 2 off. And it's like, well, I have a whole spreadsheet that I keep of all the incidences that I find, and it's ridiculous. So, just if I were just to sit here and try to list them all off, we'd be here for a while. So I'm not going to do that, but that is another video that is a video that I kind of want to do. I think it'd make for a great documentary, to be honest with you. But when we're talking about illegal gardening, we're talking about the fact that they could, a city ordinance could say, hey, we want no vegetation above a foot, unless it is this, and this. So unless it is this type of bush or this tree or something that the city okays, you have to get rid of it. So that means your common tomato plant is gone, as an example. And we've seen this played over and over and over again. So illegal gardening is this is a real thing, because if you are trying to produce food for your family, I imagine the average everyday person is going to say, well, I don't care what the city says, I'm going to do it anyway. And then we see, for example, case law, right? I Google it, Denise Morrison versus City of Tulsa, right? We see in this case where she said, no, I'm not going to remove my garden. So the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma came, the most conservative state in the union, came and destroyed her garden. They brought the city with mowers, weed eaters, tractors, and they just demolished her garden. She then took it to the 10th Circuit Court, and the 10th Circuit Court refused to even listen to oral arguments, right? So this is real life case law. I just gave you an example out of Florida State Supreme Court, and then we have something from Oklahoma going up to the 10th Circuit. So we're talking about real legislation here, right? We're talking about real life case law. And so again, we can see, and there's no doubt that, gardening can be illegal even in Oklahoma, again, the most conservative state in the union. And so, being that this is an absolute reality, what happens when somebody gets priced out of food? What are they going to do? They're going to still garden irrespective. So we have to understand that that's going to happen, right? So knowing that, right, let's just not be surprised when the government enacts, legislation or heavy-handed enforcement of their, city ordinances, etc. The next part of that is the sales of gardening produce. What a lot of people don't realize, and a lot of people may not know, let's say you are in a place, and let's say your local city says no, the state may not grant you the ability to garden, but here in this city, right, in this city of Happydale, right, rural America, we give you the right to garden. So okay, cool. So you're gardening, and you have a city ordinance, county, whatever, that says you're allowed to garden. So you're gardening, and you have you have 20 by 20 foot plot that you're gardening in your backyard, and you're like, this is great. And let's say you put all your time and effort into it. Okay, well, I've grown more tomatoes and cucumbers than I can consume. So tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, there's more of it than I can consume. And then the lady down the street wants to buy my zucchini because she wants to go and make zucchini bread. She doesn't want to go to the grocery store because the grocery store prices on it are let's say they're $6-7 and she's getting the pesticide stuff and I have mine and I'll sell it to her for $5. Everybody's happy. She can just come down the street, or I'll drop off, right? On my way out, she's Venmo'd me the money because it's digital, and I just dropped off, a basket in her front yard, right in front of her, like Uber Eats style, right in front of her patio there. Well, that would be illegal, right? That would be legal on the state level, definitely legal on the federal level, because you are now selling your produce. There's no permits, there's no license, there's no inspections. So the sale of gardening produce would also be a black market in and of itself. And I see more and more, and we've already seen where people have gotten in trouble for selling food where there was no permitting, licensing, inspection, what have you. And so, again, these are real life, black market issues that I expect that we're going to see more of, right? And again, this is one of those things where people may not realize the heavy implications. But again, when you get priced out of the food sector, when you get priced out or it's just unavailable, or let's say you're not priced out. Let's just say at the end of the day, like, you just want healthy food, because there's some people that are just wanting, like, I want to be able to go to the grocery store, and I'm tired of the Driscoll Corporation, the fact that the pesticide residue is being correlated with cancer-causing stuff. There's ongoing lawsuits. Like, I'm just tired of these big companies giving me products that are subpar, and I just want to go to the store and I want to buy strawberries. I don't care if they have the organics, I don't care if they have the organic label or not. I want to know for a fact that there's no pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, petrochemicals in my food. The grocery store can't, by and large, they can't guarantee that. So where do you go? Well, I'm going to go down the street to the lady that has a hydroponic system that grows, or aquaponic system that grows strawberries year round. I'm going to buy her strawberries from her because I know for a fact that she has a moral dilemma and moral ethical unwillingness to even utilize those products. And we know they can't utilize those products because then the fish die. So with that being said, I'm going to buy her produce at the same price or $1 cheaper than I would get at the grocery store. So it doesn't just have to be, hey, we have food scarcity or a price scarcity. It could just be, I don't trust big corporate entities anymore, and I know the person that does this because they do it because they love the game, right? These gardeners, they do it for the love of it, right? She has an aquaponic system for the love of it, and she produces great resilient gardens. So yes, I'm going to buy her produce. Again, that would be a black market. That'd be a black market sector. That'd be a black market food sector. That'd be a black market agricultural sector, right? That would be a black market enterprise. And so as we start to look at this, and as this starts to come to a head, and as we start to see more and more issues with our food systems, we're going to see illegal gardening in the aspect of gardening in places that go against city ordinance, state law. We're also going to start to see people that have resilient gardens that are going to start to sell their produce, which again will go against state and federal law. So again, something to look at. But that's number one. Let's go to number two. Number two is called the USDA Custom Exemption. And so a lot of people may or may not know this, but there is, under USDA guidelines, there's a way that you can get meat products, animal products, without going through the typical grocery store chain, right? And without getting the animal inspected by a federal meat inspector. And so again, that's called the USDA Custom Exemption. And basically what it allows you to do is, you and a few other people, neighbors, brothers, kin, whoever, friends, you could buy a fourth of an animal, right? So 4 people could go in, buy a fourth, quarter, or you could buy half or a full cow, for all intents and purposes. You could take it to a local processor that's not federally recognized or certified, and they could break the animal down and process it into steaks, ground beef, stew meat, what have you, pot roast. And you just pay them directly, and then they'll package it for you, and it will say not for sale. This is the same thing that can be done for, like wild animals that you hunt, right? You hunt an elk, they can process it for you, and they give it to you with a not for sale label on it. And so a lot of people find that you can get the prices a whole lot cheaper doing it that way. And so there's, people are like, why doesn't everybody do that? Well, because number one, sourcing. Number two, cost-wise, right? A half a cow could cost you, really anywhere between, depending on, current market pricing and stuff, really anywhere between $3,000 to $4,000 just for half a cow. I mean, it really depends. And so a lot of people just don't have, $3,000 lying around just to get half a cow. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of people don't do it. Most people just buy meat for a couple meals at a time. So they'll buy enough steak or beef for, let's say, 4 or 5 meals, right? And then they'll go back to the grocery store and buy more. So it's really just a cost-effective. And by cost-effective, I mean it's just a way to do it without breaking the bank, right? Most Americans can't afford to buy 6 months worth of animal products at a time. And so, given that reality, most people are they're out of the market, right? They're out of that price market. And so, what I can see happening is something that we've seen historically. We'll see more of it. It's people utilizing this custom meat exemption to basically create what they believe are loopholes. And make no mistake, these aren't loopholes. This is just criminality. This is just a federal crime. Now, we can argue whether it should be a federal crime or not, but that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose is just tell you that if you do something and you're trying to utilize a custom meat exemption loophole for anything other than what the purpose is to buy the animal, then that's a federal crime. And I mean, you're talking about felonies. And so I expect, because we've seen that historically, I expect to see more of it, right? There's something to be said about you could have, I mean, and this could come into fruition in many different ways. We've always heard of the meat salesmen out of their cars, right? People selling meat out of their cars. So this is not a new ideal. This is not new at all, and this has been happening historically. But there's something to say because these big, huge processors like the Big Four that own 85% of the processing, capacity here in the United States of America, 85%, which is just outrageous. They're buying cattle at, hundreds of thousands, millions at a time, whereas somebody that's doing this custom meat exemption might be buying them 10 cows at a time, right? And so there's a big difference between buying 10, processing 10, and hundreds and thousands of millions. And so if you're looking at this just for what it, looking at it for what it is, right? Let's say he buys 5 cows, right? He buys 5 cows and he takes it to a processor, or let's just say he does it himself, because realistically, if we're looking at how much you can pay a butcher or a processor, right? If you're looking at this just pragmatically, like the average meat processor, like in the Midwest, probably makes around $17 an hour. In Oklahoma, they're saying $16.85 an hour. So that's roughly $35,000 a year, depending on experience, right? So let's say you're willing to pay somebody, hey, I will pay you $25 an hour. You come work for me. I have all the equipment, have all the tools. I just want you to process as many cows as you can, right? I want you to process a cow a day, right? So now you're paying them $20 to process. And let's say they're working, 10 hours. Okay, they made $200, which is more than they would make in the, in the normal typical job market, right? And they get $200. They process this meat, and now you're turning around and selling this meat for steaks upwards of, if you're looking at how much steaks are going for, just in July 2026, ground beef is almost $7 a pound, and so steaks are easily over $10-12 a pound. So I mean, realistically, in a market economy where prices are going through the roof, like you can make very good money and pay somebody to process it above wage requirements, right? So I mean, that's just, when we're looking at this, that's what I mean. Like, this is being, every step of the way you're incurring costs. So realistically, if you were to go to a farmer and be like, hey, I will give you above market price for your cows. I want 5 cows. I will pay you hundreds of dollars above market price. Then you pay a local processor above market price for his work, and then you sell the end product that's been packaged and everything. You could still sell it cheaper than what people are buying at the grocery store. and you'll still make a profit. That just shows you how inflated this is. And so I expect people to utilize this as a way to sell meat. And I see people that are like 100%, like, think about it, right? Like, what are you asking the American consumer to do right now? You're saying, hey, we're about to bring in 300,000 metric tons of subpar quality beef products, right? We're bringing them in. We won't tell you the country of origin. You just got to trust us. China's already said that they're not going to accept JBS meat from Argentina, but you just got to trust us. We're going to bring it in, and we're going to cut the share price 25% for you. Okay, we're going to cut it 25% for you. It'll be $5.50. It'll be $5.50 a pound for ground beef. $5.50. Okay, and then you have somebody who's like, hey man, like, I have ground beef made in America, grown on old Billy's farm down the street. It's one of Billy's cows. I'll give you a pound for $5. $5 package, ready to go. Come pick it up. Let me know. I'll drop it off. Right? I'll literally Uber Eats it to you. Venmo me Venmo me. So you want 5 pounds? It'll be $25. I'll drop it off at your house because I'm headed that way anyway. Yeah, I mean that there's definitely a market there, because if you're asking consumers to choose, right? And remember, ground beef is way easier to produce than doing cuts. Like literally, all that processor has to do is put it through a grinder, right? Doesn't have to do the cutting is irrelevant. He just has to basically skin the animal and put it through a grinder. Very easy to do. And so yeah, you could have these markets form where it's like, yeah, go ahead and then Venmo it to me, do it. I'll drop it off to you, right? Don't even worry about it. Like, I'll get it dropped off. Not a big deal. Boom, wada beam, wada boom, right? And so I expect, because we have already seen this historically, right? This is nothing new. I expect that we will see more of these custom meat exemptions being used to get people meat. And we know there's people already doing it, but I expect to see more people kind of go down this trail of commerce. So, for those of you that don't know, USDA requirements are very strict, and the only way around it is to buy the animal at a custom meat exemption, through a custom meat exemption. And I expect those custom meat exemptions to be utilized for more than what the expectation is by federal law. So there you go. Number 2, custom meat exemptions. Now let's go to number 3. Next, we're going to talk about propagation. Proplifting. Is it theft or birthright? Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with what propagation is, and if you don't grow food, or you're not familiar with agriculture, if you're not in sustainability, you may not know what proplifting is. And so proplifting is the practice of taking either discarded plant material or cuttings from an already established plant and replanting them. So, for example, you could go to let's say you wanted to grow a blueberry bush, right? And I've done this myself. I can go to my established blueberry bush and I can take a cutting, I can apply some root hormone to the base, and I can plant it into its own pot, and I can grow out a whole other plant from that cutting. And so we call that proplifting. And so the reason why this is going to be something that is going to become more important as we go on is, as food prices increase, the cost of plants are going to go up as well. The cost of seeds are going to go up. And so people are going to start looking to proplifting. And we've already seen this happen. We've seen this occurred. And this has occurred, and it will continue to occur. So a great example of this, and I'm just going to give you real life examples here. As the price of food goes up, people may decide, right, we're going to start gardening, kind of like what I was talking about in part 1, right? Food is expensive. I want food that doesn't have pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, petrochemicals. I want to grow it myself, so I'm going to start growing food. So what do? They'll go to the big box stores, right? They'll go to their Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, Walmart, and they're going to be like, you know what, I'm going to get some plants. I'm going to grow them in my backyard. And then when they go, they're going to, see, wow, the price of plants are pretty expensive. And then they're going to start thinking about, okay, well, I should get some fruit bushes, some fruit trees, right? Because that'll grow back every year. So every year I'll have a harvest. And they start looking at the prices of it, and they're like, wow, this is pretty expensive. So once you start researching this, you're like, you know what? Do I want to pay those prices? And if you're not wanting to pay those prices, what are some options? Well, you could go ethically find somebody. Hey, I see you have a blackberry bush. I see you have a blueberry bush. I see you have an apple tree. I see you have a nectarine tree. I see you have an avocado tree, right? I'm interested in consuming those products and growing that because those are the products I consume. Can I get a cutting? They may be like, yeah, sure, here you go. But what if you don't want to ask? Well, then we see how propagation can, what some people would call theft, right? So let's look at a few real life examples here. So here on the screen, you can see this is just a 3-gallon blackberry bush, right? $79. This is today, as of August 25th, right? August 25th, Home Depot, right here. $79 for a 3-gallon pot. 3 gallons is not very big, folks. I mean, they go all the way up to, you'll see some more established in 10 gallons. So this is a small 3-gallon starter bush, $79. Next here we have a $169 avocado plant here. You know, this looks like a small, maybe 3-gallon tops, right? Very small plant, avocado, $169. Next here we can see another one. This is nectarine. So for a nectarine plant here, again, you can see very small plant. $199. So $200 for a small nectarine plant. Again, not very big at all. Here's a 7-gallon blueberry bush plant. So a little bigger, not extremely big, but a little bigger. $90 for a 7-gallon blueberry plant. And so again, as we look at this and we look at this pragmatically for what it is, are you going to pay? So here's my question. Are you going to pay $200 for a nectarine plant? Are you going to pay $160 for an avocado plant? Are you going to pay almost $100 for a blackberry plant or a blueberry plant? Like, are you going to spend that much money? And if the answer is no, well, then are you going to do without, or are you going to get creative? And I expect to see people become creative when it comes to, feeding their families. Because again, look at what we're talking about. We're talking about a human need, food. And you're talking about somebody that's wanting to do it apart from being codependent on big agriculture. So if they're going to grow it themselves, they have to at least get it to their location in the ground. So you really have only one option, right? You can grow it yourself or locally source it. And so if people are going to grow it themselves, they have to get it. If they're priced out of growing, what can you expect? Well, you can expect at the minimum propagation theft. At the worst, as we've seen, people are going to start ripping plants out of the ground. They're going to start ripping bushes and trees out of the ground. And we've seen that too. We actually saw that during the COVID pandemic. So this is one of those things where I think it's important that we just understand the reality of desperate people. When desperate people are hungry, they're going to utilize whatever means necessary. So again, propagation. Is it theft? Is it birthright? I'll let you decide. Let's move on to number 4. Number 4, agricultural larceny. So what does that mean? Exactly what you think. It's the stealing of agricultural products or animals, right? So a lot of times people will think of like cattle rustling, or people will think of kind of what we talked about earlier. Just for example, going to a big box store, going to Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, seeing plants that are there and just taking from the shelf and running, right? And so I expect that when we start to hit a really big impasse when it comes to food, I expect that to become normal. We already see places like Walmart already, they are creating lock boxes for certain types of deodorant, soaps, and razors, right? Like we already see certain items being protected already. And so I expect big box stores to save, try to hold off as much of larceny as possible. I expect them to, if that were to be a problem, I expect them to start to pay for security services or pay for off-duty officers to help do security. I can see them creating big metal cages to put plants and fruit-bearing bushes and trees in there, and they're going to have to be hand walked to the register. Like, I expect to see that to happen, not just for theft, but also to prevent proplifting, right? Because, one plant that one of those bushes, right, you could easily take numerous cuttings and grow out individual plants. So to prevent just total theft and then the proplifting of those plants, I expect them to utilize, some kind of cage system like that. We can see, and this isn't just big box stores, right? I can see plant nurseries at night, or even during the daytime being raided, people, stealing in, high volume, which again, we have seen historically. I expect people that have gardens that people know about to have their plants taken, have their fruit taken. These are all things that I expect to see. Even go as far as people knowing where the farms are at and going to the farms and taking them directly from the fields, right? Like, these are all things that we can expect to see. And so that will create, that creates black markets, because now somebody goes to a box store and they say, hey, I'm going to take, if they were to take seven blueberry plants, right? They could take them and then they could, scratch off the labeling or put it in a new bucket or container, or they could just sell it as is and say, hey, these are going for Home Depot. These are going for like $70 at Home Depot. I'll give it to you for 40, right? They just made a $40 profit off of taking a plant, right? So again, this agricultural larceny is going to be something that's huge. And then, you could go to these fields, be like, they go to the fields where they have orchards, and they could at night take a couple boxes worth, and they could go around the very next day and they could sell them. So again, I expect to see this agricultural larceny happen once, we see an impasse when it comes to the increase of food prices. I see, again, farmers being raided. I see small garden cooperations being raided, the small gardener residential being raided. I can see big box stores being targeted. All these things are going to be examples of things that aren't going to be off limits, right? Because again, we're talking about hungry people. We're talking about hungry, desperate people. So that's number 4. Now let's talk about number 5. Number 5, agricultural backdoors. So when we look at scarcity, remember, scarcity doesn't always necessarily mean that there's just not something available, right? That's one metric of scarcity. Another metric is there's lots of things available, but you're priced out of you're currently priced out of it, right? We see this in pharma, we see this in medicine, we see this in infrastructure, we see this in the housing market, right? So there could very well be food available, but the overall price of it priced out. Like, there could be very well people, as we just saw with Home Depot, there could be people currently priced out of the blackberry market because they just don't have, they don't have the $60, $70 for one to be able to afford a bush. Some people don't have the $200 to get a nectarine tree, or $160 it is to get an avocado plant, right? So you very well could just be priced out of any given system. And so it's important when we look at agricultural backdoors that there will be a void that's going to be filled. Somebody's going to fill that void. And so how's that going to look? Well, I see a couple different markets. Markets that we currently see commercially would be things like the raw milk market, right? There's a market for raw milk. There's a market for raw honey. And giving people those products without, like raw milk is just, in many places, it's just flat out illegal, right? There's just no way to get a safe inspection, state or federal inspection for raw milk. So that is an outlawed product that people seek after, and there's markets for it because people have, there are markets out there where they're like, hey, I'm losing in this dairy thing right now, right? There are many raw milk producers that are like, hey, I try to do this the legit way, right? I've tried to do this with the pasteurization, and I just can't compete with big agricultural dairy industry. So I'm going to give people a niche product they want. People want raw milk. I have cows. Cool. I can produce and I can make a living, and I can make a decent one by giving people a product. Now, they understand that this product is outlawed, but for them, there is a risk reward factor that they're taking into consideration. Same with raw honey, same with all these other, agricultural products. So that's one example of the backdoor agricultural enterprise. Another one, going back to number one, would be the gardening thing, right? There are people out there that have resilient gardens, and they have some backyard hens. So let's say we are put into a food system situation, where people are now thinking, okay, I don't think this food thing's going to get better right away. So I have backyard hens. I make enough chickens. I make enough eggs and chicken products for my family, but I see that this is becoming an issue, and people are interested in these products. So what are they going to do? They're going to say, you know what, I'm going to increase this herd, and I'm going to do it as quickly as possible. Or maybe they see the writing on the wall now. Maybe people are seeing egg fluctuations, and they're seeing the recalls, and there could be people right now that are like, you know what, I see the writing on the wall. I'm going to go ahead right now. I'm going to utilize Amazon. And I'm going to get a 36 tray incubator, and I'm going to start incubating chicken eggs like my life literally depends on it right now. And I'm sure there are people out there every month, they're popping out as many chickens as humanly possible. So with a tray of 36, if they have decent incubation results, I mean, they're getting 24 chicks every month, and like clockwork, and they're punching them out. And they could be doing that because they're wanting to sell them. They could be trying to grow a huge flock, right? It's amazing what you can do with a little bit of lumber, some chicken wire, and an $80 incubator off of Amazon, right? And so now they're putting themselves in a position where they're just going to produce as much food as humanly possible. That creates a backdoor market, because if we see what egg prices did last year in 2025, depending on where you're at, we saw the low end of $6 a dozen to the high end of $12 a dozen. So when you're looking at this from a pragmatic standpoint, and you see the trends, there's a very good argument to be made that we're going to see another spike in commercial egg prices. And so if you have the ability to hedge that and fill that void, let's say you can produce sustainably, right? You can produce a dozen eggs sustainably, $5. Well, that's pretty good in a market where the low end is $6, right? So if you're able to produce eggs sustainably off grid for cheaper than what the commercial subsidized market can do, well, guess what? You have a lucrative little business there. And again, with modern day technology, this doesn't have to look like it did years back. So what can we expect people to do? Hey, community threads. Hey, Sally, I know you got some eggs. We're looking for a dozen eggs. Sally can just put you on the roster. Sally's like, all right. Hey, Deborah, every Wednesday I'll pop off. Make sure you Venmo me that $5, and I'll leave a dozen eggs on your doorstep. I'll leave a dozen eggs in your mailbox, right? We don't have to engage. We don't have to talk, but I'll go down the street real quick. Boom, put them in there. Wada bing, wada boom, right? And there you have it, right? These are resilient systems that we already see happening. And again, we've seen this in the raw milk and the raw honey market. And so you could very well see this happening with, chicken, eggs, and other commodities. Because as you guys saw from a previous video, if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go watch it. Eggs are considered to be an agricultural commodity, according to the federal government, by federal law. And so that's one instance. And what we have to remember, right? You're talking about felony level crime, selling animal products without a license, without inspections and all that stuff. You're talking about some pretty hefty crimes. And so again, when you're talking about feeding your family, and you're talking about the inability to get, a product from the commercial sector, right, from your grocery store, yeah, people are going to revert back to these traditional local systems, and they're not going to care about the the criminality of it. And here's another thing too, right? We're talking about federal law versus local, right? Could it very well be that local police also need food to eat? eggs to eat, right? So again, this ability that, hey, is it possible that there are right now, in fact, police officers that are buying eggs from, from a local, from a local person without all the federal stamps and all the federal licenses, right? Very well be. So again, who's going to be the federal entity, federal law enforcement officer that's going to go by and enforce these laws? I don't know. That's for the government to decide. But again, you can expect to see these resilient systems come into play. Another thing to think about, going back to the backyard gardener. Hey, let's say a guy goes ahead and gets a couple rabbits, right? Gets 2 or 3 female rabbits, male rabbit. Let's say he gets 5 rabbits altogether. 4 females, $1. Man, you could start pumping out a lot of meat, right? People already go to the store and buy chicken wings, chicken breasts, a whole chicken. Well, now people are selling, now they're selling rabbits, right? Rabbit leg, right? All the stuff. So you can cut. I don't know if you've ever seen I'll put a picture here. If you've never seen a rabbit cut up, like it looks like it could be chicken, right? It looks like that could be a chicken wing or a chicken leg or a breast. And so, again, you can expect to see these resilient systems. And when I say resilient, I just mean the fact of they're going to be bulletproof, right? With a little bit of pasture, you're growing these things off grid sustainably. And so again, it's one of those instances where we can expect to see these agricultural backdoors start to open up to fill that void, which again is illegal, right? Federally illegal, super illegal. We're talking about felony level crimes here for simply trying to feed yourself. So again, these are real realities, and I expect as food prices go up and as Americans get scared and nervous, we're going to see these various enterprises, criminal black market enterprises, open up at a level that I think most people would be shocked to learn. So there you have it. That's what I got for you guys. Tell me what you think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. Do you expect to see these to happen? Are any of these new to you? Tell me what you think in the comment section below. Tell me what you think is going to happen. And tell me what your research is telling you. I'm curious to hear you guys in the comment section below. As always, guys, long live the Republic.